I just turned 48. We're gonna talk a little bit about the aging process. You know, I'm approaching that 50-year-old mark, and I think that as we get older, there's a couple different ways that we deal with the aging process. One is to just age and, you know, feel like this is the way it is and not do anything about it. And I see a number of people do that. But the other side of it is, what can you do as you age? And I don't recover like I did in my 20s. I feel different aches and pains that I definitely didn't feel in my 20s or even 30s. And I think a top priority as we are in our 50s, 60s, and 70s is making sure that we're working on proper joint range of motion and alignment of our bodies. And then obviously, you know, people talk about strength training, cardio is important. But, you know, if you're having aches and pains that you didn't have, you feel tighter in your back, you feel tighter in your knees, you're not able to have the same shoulder range of motion, there's a reason for that. You know, if you are sitting at a desk, if you're not playing the sports that you used to play, our body is really perishable. And if we're not doing things to maintain proper joint range of motion or maintain proper balance, our body starts to, for lack of a better word, starts to decay. So it just becomes more and more important as I get older to realize that I have to do the work, I have to do corrective exercise, I have to do the wisdom movements to keep my body balanced, keep my joint range of motion as good as it can be, and then focus on the strength training. So if I strength train first and I'm just focused on muscle, but I'm not focused on joint range of motion, if I fall, my hip might not be able to get the proper range of motion, and I may injure myself, especially if I'm skiing. If I can't collapse properly, I'm going to be more prone to injury. So the balancing act is making sure that as we are decreasing in range of motion, because we're not moving as much, because, you know, the aging process, we're not recovering as fast, and then finding activities that you like to do that reinforce proper alignment, you know, reinforce healthy behavior. So, you know, for me here at the beach, it's not a surfable day, but I love to surf, and I love to get out in the water, and it requires range of motion in my hips, it requires range of motion in my knees, it requires actually different ranges of motion that I definitely do not do in a normal day-to-day. My training, my wisdom movements, and some of my alignment stuff gets in those ranges, but if I were to do absolutely nothing as I age, I would very quickly not be able to surf anymore. It just, like I said, I'm almost 50, being out there, you have to fold, you have to bend, you have to get into kind of compressed positions that are positions I don't normally get in on a normal day-to-day, other than when I do wisdom movements, when I'm stretching, and then when I'm training, I get in some of these movements, and I force myself to get in those movements because I know that I'm going to need to get into a lower squat, or I'm going to have to get range of motion in my hips in the water. So the key takeaway is, you know, finding activities you can do to stay flexible, stay balanced, and then continue to train as you age. And it does get a little bit harder. That's, you know, people don't want to hear that, but it does. But it gets easier when you make it a priority and you do it every day. You stop training altogether. The hardest part is getting back into the rhythm. If you can train consistently, that's where you'll start to get a tailwind and you'll see those results you want to see. So that's it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, everybody. Beautiful Outer Banks, North Carolina. I will see you in the next